So obviously it's been a bit quiet, really, since obviously we've had the local elections, Parliament was closed. But of course, it was the end of a parliamentary session as well, giving the sort of the MPs a bit of a break, but also a chance to set out the government's new legislative agenda. And of course, this means this means new bills, and of course, new new legislation, at least to sink our teeth into and to find out what essentially madcap Tory thinking is going to come next. And trust me, we've got some doozies coming our way. We've got Dominic Raab's much hyped up bill of English, bill of UK rights. I don't know what is exactly going to be in this bill, but we're going to find out soon. There is obviously the quote Brexit freedom bills, which could certainly be interesting when that comes through. Like I say, at the moment we do not know what's going to be in it. Like I say, the Queen's speech obviously is sort of used as a more this is the bill, but it doesn't really go into sort of detail. But obviously, this is if you were sort of a bookie betting on what's the Queen going to bring up this time in this in this year's Queen's speech, then certainly the Brexit Freedoms Bill and of course the British Bill of Rights. Again, very worrying, certainly to be bringing up, considering the fact that we've had a couple of bills in the last session of Parliament which have actually taken away rights from people in the UK. So certainly this session, again, we'll hear the Queen's speech on Thursday, and that's when everything sort of kicks off. And then we'll certainly get to know more about these wonderful bills that will be probably coming up in the next, certainly the next couple of months. And of course, as we heard just a couple of days ago, potentially Johnson may be even facing a leadership challenge, maybe in the not too distant future. We'll have to see. Like I say, things could get very, very interesting, not only just here, of course, but in Northern Ireland as well, because the DUP still are not playing ball. With this, essentially still acting like, well, not only throwing the toys out of the pram, but the full pram as well. So, with that said, let's go diving into this. And of course, before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, the YouTube subscription membership link is open as well as the new YouTube thank you button, where you get to leave like a little funky, bright, shiny comment, which is quite fun. So, as always, thank you very much to all those who do help support the channel that way. And now, on with this. So this comes from The Guardian, covering obviously the Queen's speech and, of course, what bills to accept as we look at forthcoming Tory policy. So Boris Johnson will get a chance to give his government a mini relaunch, with his legislative agenda for the next year is set out at the state opening of Parliament in the Queen's speech. And that happens again this Thursday. So governments always try to give the Queen's speech a theme. And this year's will be about trying to grow the economy, easing burdens on families, and of course, levelling up. And again, considering that we've seen how very quickly they've abandoned levelling up, I'm not expecting much from the levelling up bill when that gets announced, considering we've already seen the white paper, and the first two chapters are, these are all the problems that the UK is having. This is why they are having these problems. And then, of course, you get to the next part where it talks about money, and there's no sign of any policy in there. So I don't know what's going to be in the levelling up bill. But when it comes out to obviously handing out the money, it's very clearly that Rishi Sunak just went, nope, you can't have that money. And of course, as we've heard very a lot of the time, very, very recently, local councillors, when it comes to sort of levelling up, especially in the areas up the north, have just laughed because they've seen essentially what is meant to be levelling up money, basically a pot of money that already exists for them, just moved. And again, it's not new money, it's money that already exists. They're just changing the name on what money that is, or it's money that is needed for another project or something else, just taken away from them. So yeah, leveling up. Again, nice slogan, but there's absolutely nothing to it. Anyway, we continue. But of course, all the Queen's speeches tend to be a very mix of flagship manifesto measures and, of course, more routine bits of legislative housekeeping. And although the ministers routinely claim in interviews that they, quote, cannot anticipate what will be in the Queen's speech, it is well known what bills are in the pipeline, and some of them are specifically announced in advance. So here is a guide to what's going to happen, or what we are expecting to be announced on Thursday. So these are ones that are currently expected to be in this Queen's speech bill. The schools bill. Nadeem Zari, the education secretary, says that the bill is designed to create a, quote, a school system that works for every child, parent and family, and is presented as part of the government's levelling up agenda. The bill will be easier for schools, make it easier for schools in England to join the multi-academy trusts and try to strengthen their regulatory framework. And again, we've seen on a couple of occasions, I might actually go back and try and dig it out. There was actually a good article a couple of weeks ago about how the Nadeem Zafari is basically, well, should we say, making schools even more difficult, not for kids, but should we say the more, should we say the teachers and obviously the running of these schools infinitely more difficult. So yeah, expect this probably not to be good as well. Anyway, it will also introduce a new national funding formula for schools intended to make sure that schools funding is fairer, setting up compulsory registers for children not in school. Again, school funding fairer. We've seen this type of promise before. They haven't delivered on it. Remember, the levelling up agenda sent Rishi Sunak's constituency a constituency that does not need any levelling up money or any money funneling to it because it's doing just pretty well. It sent pretty much all the money when there are other areas around it that are crying out for investment. I somehow expect that to be similar set forth. And of course, the higher education bill. The centerpiece of this bill will be the introduction of the, quote, lifelong loan entitlement, allowing people a loan equivalent for up to 4 years of university education of over 37,000 that they can use over their lifetime to fund a technical training. The government claims this will amount to, quote, a seismic shift for post-18 education. Of course, my first problem is the fact that it is a loan, indicating on the lifelong loan. Why are people going to take out this loan of £37,000 if this is going to be a lifelong loan that could be tying a massive noose around their neck? We see, this could be, it's a good idea, but I do not agree with the fact that it's a lifelong loan, which gives me huge pause to it. But we'll have to see what obviously is in the full bill. The levelling up and, of course, regeneration bill, designed to stop high streets from being blighted by empty shops. This bill will give councils in England the power to force landlords to rent out commercial properties. It also gives local authorities new power to take control of empty buildings through beefed up compulsory purchase orders. And of course, this bill will also reportedly allow councils to double council tax on second homes that are not occupied. Again, some of this stuff I sort of agree with. The fact that council taxes can now double the council tax on homes that are not occupied, which is, again, I think quite good. Forcing landlords to rent out commercial properties, I sort of agree with that. Again, giving councils more, obviously, the right to do that. And of course, again, same for this. But of course, it actually depends what other stuff is in the bill is there, how a council is going to get given the authority to do that. And of course, then that goes to, if council's given these powers, who's in charge of that council? Of course. Like I say, don't expect, shall we say, that to be doubled up if you're in a Conservative council. And of course, we get to now the British Bill of Rights. Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary, said in an interview with The Sun on Sunday that this long-promised Tory bill, which is designed to try and limit some of the influence of, quote, Labour's Human Rights Act, again, given their key target there, again, obviously their problems here are, this is obviously given protection to people. And again, as much as you might not like it, criminals do deserve rights. A justice system has to be fair. equal and balanced. And just because a criminal is afforded certain rights does not mean that it's wrong, because if you ever found yourself, maybe you committed a crime or anything like that, then you would also be expected to afford those certain rights as well. So whatever's in this bill, I certainly have no idea, but needless to say, this is probably going to be certainly one of the most controversial ones. So expect us to cover this quite heavily the more information that we get about it. But of course, anyway, it continues. So again, sought to limit some of the influence of Labour's Human Rights Act and give UK judges more freedom to diverge from the European Court of Human Rights rulings. Again, that's worrying, certainly going to cause a lot of conflict. And of course, this would ensure that, quote, the public safety gets more priority than the rights of offenders. Again, worrying about that part, because again, just because you're not an offender one day doesn't mean that you might be one day. And again, having those protections is important for a fair and balanced justice system. So, in particular, he wants to make it easier for the government to deport foreign offenders, not surprising there, and of course, limit the extent to which the European Court of Human Rights can be used to try and muzzle the press on privacy grounds. So obviously, this is the next one, the Brexit Freedoms Bill. This will, I expect these two, the British Bill of Rights and the Brexit Freedom Bill, to probably be the two biggies that we're probably talking about in the next couple of months. So Boris Johnson has promised what he calls the Brexit Freedom Bill, which is intended to try and facilitate the removal of EU regulation retained after Britain's departure from the EU. Other Brexit-related bills will include one to allow the gene editing and, of course, a procurement bill to make it easy for small firms to bid for public sector contracts, and, of course, a data reform bill. Again, that ain't going to go well. We've talked about this hundreds of times before. And of course, the next one, the broadcasting bill, which is basically going to be the sell-off of Channel 4, which, again, going to be eminently very sad. I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll never know. The economic crime bill, this will be a big one. If this has proper teeth, then this would be an incredibly good bill. But expect, again, because it is a Tory majority government, that, shall we say, to this bill be, well, pretty toothless. To say one thing, but a lot of the Tories have demonstrated that they do at least want this bill to have teeth to be able to do this. So if Johnson tries to defang this, expect probably a lot of rebellion on this. The animal welfare and animals abroad bill, considering what we've just had with the imposition of the new Australian trade deal, could be quite interesting. Again, this bill will impose a ban on importing hunting trophies and a ban on sale of advertising holidays that involve cruelty to animals. But plans for the bill do include a ban on the import and sale of foie gras and fur have been reportedly being dropped. Again, foie gras and fur, interesting. Of course, Tory majority there. The draft mental health bill. This legislation, published in draft, will be overhaul of the Mental Health Act of 1983 and will limit to the extent the act can be used to detain autistic people, and will be used with learning difficulties, and will also ensure that more consideration is given to treatment preferences of patients detained under the Act. The bill will employ most of the recommendations of a review that have been provided by Professor Simon Worsley of 2018. Again, not really massively controversial unless something pops up about it. Not expecting it. And of course, the draft conversion therapy bill. This draft bill is expected on the banning of conversion practices, although controversially not for trans people. Again, probably talking about that future as well. And of course, we've got some being carried over. But one thing that we are worried about is this employment bill, because we haven't heard a lot about it, but it potentially has just as many potential fireworks and to be as very big and as controversial as probably the Brexit Freedom Bill or the British Bill of Rights, depending what's in it. And of course, the government has also reportedly dropped an employment bill that had been intended to, quote, strengthen workers' rights. And of course, we've seen very, very recently what they mean by strengthening workers' rights. It's basically the usual thing we see in America of, we're going to give you worker freedom, but in reality, it takes away worker freedom. Like I say, remember, the Tory government currently are the ones who have been promising for years that they are going to get rid of zero-hour contracts, but every single time they don't really seem to go ahead and actually do anything about it. And in a time when they have a massive majority, they certainly aren't interested. But anyway, that's just a glimpse into the future, probably stuff that we're going to end up talking about on the channel. Like I say, I can see certainly the two biggies being obviously the Brexit Freedom Bill and of course the British Bill of Rights. Certainly probably going to be quite controversial, and potentially some of those others as well. So expect us to see me talking about those certainly a lot in the future. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course thank you very much to all the people who do support the channel. Like I say, please do click that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there's a link to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee. And of course, the 2 other YouTube subscriptions, and of course, the YouTube thank you button as well. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.